nuclear non-proliferation treaty at the UN because of their concern about nuclear weapons, and they are here to talk to us today about their experience of nuclear weapons in Japan. So with that, I'm going to stop and give the microphone to Bill Shaw, who's going to talk with you for just a few minutes before I introduce our guests.
Thank you very much, Tanya. My name is Bill Shaw, and my wife and I, Marina, we direct an organization called Cross Currents International Institute. It's a nonprofit organization. It's been around since the mid-1980s, and our primary purpose is providing opportunities and sponsoring projects that bring people together across boundaries of economics, political systems, religions, bringing people together from around the world. At any given time, we have 4 or 5 active projects. At this time, we have in Sudan, in Kenya, Sri Lanka, working with these folks in Japan and in Russia. So we have a lot of activities going on, although we're a small organization. I personally have a very deep concern about the nuclear weapons, and it bothers me a lot to see this kind of information. I study it myself, I read it. I especially am bothered by that last slide that you saw that calls this horrendous piece of technology a peacekeeper. It is such a oxymoron to call this killing machine the peacekeeper, which is when you, perhaps many of you or most of you have sometime visited the Air Force Museum over at Wright-Patterson. We went there the other day with our guests from Japan. We went because they wanted to see the boxcar. Boxcar is the B-29 that dropped the bomb, the atomic bomb in Nagasaki. There's a large display there. Included in the display is some information about the atomic bomb that also dropped in Hiroshima. It's quite sobering, really moving. We stood there with our friends from Japan for probably 45 minutes or an hour looking at this, thinking about it, reading the panels, just looking at it. Just looking at it and imagining what this airplane has carried, what it has done, controversies around it. As we stood there, there were many, probably hundreds, I don't know, thousands maybe, people meandering through the museum, casually looking at this and looking at that. And of course, there are so many airplanes, you can't begin to look at all the airplanes. And they would walk past this particular plane with little or no acknowledgement of its role in history and what it had done. There was a little place where you could sit down and watch the story about the nuclear weapons and the Manhattan Project. A few people would sit down and watch. On one occasion, a man with his family, young children, he motioned to them, hurry, come, sit down. And he says, I want you to see this. It's a story about nukes. I love nukes. Wow. There's Rumi standing there who had been on the other end of that nuke. A pretty powerful moment. We've had several really amazing moments since they've arrived last Thursday. Just one other quick anecdote. On Sunday morning, they spoke at a church. And at the church, which I already knew in advance, there's a gentleman who is amazing. He's 90 years old, absolutely sharp, physically active, great person. He was a senior scientist who worked with Robert Oppenheimer directly in the Manhattan Project at Los Alamos in developing the atomic bomb. After the detonation of the bomb in Hiroshima, he then spent about 3 years in Japan studying the after effects. He says that he has watched over 100 nuclear tests, ranging from Utah and Nevada out to the islands in the Pacific Ocean where we did testing for many years. He's watched over 100 of these. He can tell you what it looks like, what it feels like. You listen to Rumi tell her story about being a survivor of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. And then after the presentation, he came up to her, embraced her, and the two of them together with tears in their eyes, he says, "I'm sorry for what I did." Those are the moments of bringing people together. That's what we need to do as individuals, as people. Governments are not equipped to do that type of citizen diplomacy. As individuals, we can do it. That's the purpose of Cross Currents. Okay, let me quickly introduce you to our guests. Is that appropriate, Tanya, or do you wish to?
No, go ahead.
Rumi? Rumi is from Kyoto. She was living in Hiroshima at the time of the atomic bomb dropping. She was a 5-year-old child at the time, and she'll share a little of that experience with you. She presently is very active, an active volunteer, telling her story to school children, university places, community places. She's a volunteer at the Kyoto Museum for World Peace. She's a very active woman, and in addition to all of those activities, she has a house full of people to take care of in Kyoto. Her husband and her grandchildren and maybe a few more. A cat and a dog. We would also like to introduce you to Yoshiko Tanigawa. Yoshiko is a good friend. We actually stayed in her home just a few weeks ago ourselves, my wife Marina and I, in Kyoto. And she's an educator by background, at one time was a teacher. She now is a full-time activist, I would say. She works at the Kyoto Museum for World Peace as a translator and interpreter, and she's a graduate student herself right now in economics, looking at forestry. She's very much committed to issues related to the ecology and environmental issues. We welcome both of you. Thank you so much for being willing to come and be here. I'm going to give this microphone to